What's going on, folks? I'm your host, Manpreet, aka MMA Lock of the Night, and your boy on Twitter at MMALOT. And this week, we are going over the big UFC 261 event, pay-per-view, triple title fights in the as the co-main, co-main, and main event, whatever the fuck you want to call it. Very excited for it. We got Kamaru Usman defending his title once again against Jorge Masvidal, a rematch from a fight that happened last July over there on Fight Island. And apparently Jorge Masvidal didn't have a full training camp there, so they wanted to put this fight together once again to see what Jorge Masvidal could truly bring to the table. I don't know if it's really going to matter that much, let's be honest. And then secondly, we also have the flyweight title on the line. Valentina Shevchenko is going to look to continue her run through the 125-pound division and continue to cement herself as the flyweight goat over there at 125 pounds in that female division. And then lastly, we have a banger of a fight at strawweight. We got Weili Zhang defending her strawweight title going up against Rose Namajunas. Very, very fun fight. Very interesting risks and threats that Rose brings into this fight against Zhang, and I can't wait to see how she goes out there and tries to deflate the hype of Zhang. That's especially huge just after that fight of the year, if not fight of the decade contender between her and Ioana and Jacek from February of last year. So I can't wait. It's such a great card. There's a couple other good fights sprinkled out throughout the card as well. Obviously, you have former middleweight champion Chris Weidman on the undercard going up against Uriah Hall. You got Jimmy Crute going up against Anthony Smith. A ton of great fights on the card, but obviously the focus is going to be on the three title fights at the top here. So yeah, I really can't wait to break it down for you guys. One thing that I want to add to the show, obviously we like to keep it quick and concise between 30 and 45 minutes. But one thing I would like to add, and I'm sure a lot of people would be very appreciative of it for, would be just quickly going over the last event. And what I mean by that is just like, seeing how the lock of the night play did, seeing how the dog of the night play did, the fate of the night, and the sleeper of the night, and see if they truly came to fruition. And we didn't do too shabby. I think 3 out of 4 of them we did pretty well on. So the lock of the night play, we had Tracy Cortez. She scores 86.58 points, kind of hoping that she was going to hit that 100-point mark. Didn't help that she missed weight by half a pound before the actual fight even started. So that was a little bit of a challenge for her going up against the scales. Luckily, she pulls off the victory. I wish we got a little bit more out of her rather than just 86 points. But at least she got the dub. Dog of the night. This one definitely falls flat on his face. Chase Sherman shows that the USADA violation was indeed correct after his last win over Ike Villanueva. And you guys can see, if you guys put the picture side by side of the Chase Sherman weighing in before Ike Villanueva last year and then weighing in last week against Andrei Arlovsky, there's a clear difference in terms of how his physique looks. And it was a big red flag. And unfortunately, he didn't end up coming out with the win. So he falls flat on his face as a dog of the night play at 37.4 points. Fate of the night comes through. Call it a robbery if you want. But at least if you guys listen to me, the fate of the night was Lupita Godinez. She was in the 9,000s in terms of her salary. And she only comes out with 44 points. Not a good look for somebody that's that high of a salary range. And obviously works out for us as a fate of the night. So I was happy to nail that. And then sleeper of the night. This one definitely came through. I think he was about 30%-ish owned in the big tournament, in the big game. But Gerald Meerschaert comes out with 101 points or 101.58 points with the quick 2-minute submission victory over Bartosz Fabinski. So I was very happy to call 3 out of 4 of these. Again, lock of the night. It would have been nice to have Cortez score at least upwards of 100 points, but we'll take the 86. So I'm not too mad at what we brought to the table with the advice that I brought to you guys last week. Hopefully we can replicate it, at least get 3 out of 4, hoping for 4 out of 4. 4 out of 4 solid picks and reads here for you guys so we can capitalize on making the best of our slate and our opportunity for the fights this weekend. All right. Before we move along, I do want to let you guys know that I want to plug in our sponsor, Prize Picks. If you guys go over to prizepicks.com, use promo code UFC100, they'll match your initial deposit up to $100. Again, it's a player prop website where you're pretty much just banking on an over or under on fantasy points on these fighters. you have to parlay at least 2 of them together and get the over-under right on both of them, up to 5 legs, and they have a great multiplier. Again, another tool for you guys to go out there and win some money trying to bet on UFC. And yeah, more often than not, it works out pretty well. I did not release a Prize Picks video last week as it did go over my head. I am expecting, or I will be releasing one tomorrow afternoon once they drop the actual props on prizepicks.com. So just be ready for the drop. Go over to prizepicks.com, use promo code UFC100, and they will match your initial deposit up to $100, and you'll be ready for when I drop my Prize Picks video tomorrow. I'm sure Sal or myself will put in the link or the comments of this video so you guys can go check it out and, you know, take my thoughts into consideration when you're ultimately making your point, your plays over there on Prize Picks. So once again, prizepicks.com, use promo code UFC100, and they'll match your initial deposit up to $100. All right, let's quickly just plug myself. I guess I always forget to do that at MMALOTN on Twitter, at MMALOTN on Instagram, as well as the YouTubes. Do want to give a quick shout out to all my Patreon members as well. If you guys want betting tips, not so much the DFS side of things. DFS side of things is always here on Sal Vetri's channel, and Sal Vetri's Patreon as well. But in terms of straight betting stuff, head on over to my Patreon. It's $5 a month. We've ballooned up to over 325 members. You know, the business has really been picking up over the last month or so, and that's a direct attribute to the fact that I'm on a 9-event winning streak right now. 8 straight lock of the night hits. We're hoping to make it 10 straight winning events this weekend. So come along, join the team, and we can continue cashing these lock of the night tickets. So shout out to everybody that's on the Patreon. One thing that I have forgotten to do over the last couple streams that I've done on Sal's channel is not give you guys my quick picks. And I'll definitely give you guys my quick picks right off the bat right here. Just so you guys have an idea of where my head's at. If you want more in-depth breakdowns for every single fight, just head on over to my channel. Again, the link is in the description below, and that way you'll get more information on every single fight compared to the only 4 fights that I'm going to be going a little bit more in-depth on this stream for. So, yeah, check out my channel and my podcast, the MMA Lockcast, for the full card breakdown. In terms of the quick picks, I'll be starting at the bottom. I got Na Liang over Ariane Carnelossi. I got Jeff Molina over Kaleng Iori. I got Zhu Rong over Rodrigo Vargas. Dana Batgiril over Kevin Natividad. Pat Sabatini over Tristan Connolly. Carl Roberson over Brendan Allen. Dwight Grant over Stefan Sekulic. Randy Brown over Alex Oliveira. Jimmy Crute over Anthony Smith. Uriah Hall over Chris Weidman. Valentina Shevchenko over Jessica Andrade. Wiley Zhang over Rose Namajunas, and I'm expecting Kamaru Usman to once again defeat Jorge Masvidal. And to help me or help share my thoughts on why I think Kamaru Usman is going to defend once again, let's just quickly get into the lock of the night breakdown, and we'll get into that first fight. My lock of the night play is going to be Kamaru Usman here. You know, look at the last time he fought Jorge Masvidal. You're talking about 156 points. I could absolutely see him scoring upwards of 130, 140 points again this time around against Jorge Masvidal. And I don't think the full training camp is going to be that big of a positive or an advantage for Jorge this time around. Like it's going to be very difficult to come up with a game plan to train hard enough over, you know, the last 6 to 8 weeks that he's had to prepare for this fight to overcome a style like Kamaru Usman. Kamaru Usman is one of the best fighters in the UFC and probably will go down as one of the best fighters of all time, given the tools that he has to work with inside the cage. And what I mean by that is a high-level wrestling game, very strong, and to back that all up is solid cardio over 25 minutes to go out there and implement that same game plan from minute 1 to minute 25 or however long he needs to defeat you. And that's what Kamaru Usman does so well, which is why he's, 18-1 over his pro MMA career. And that's why Jorge Masvidal is 35-14 in his pro MMA career. Now, the one thing that really pisses me off about Jorge Masvidal and a lot of his fans as of late, don't get me wrong, I'm a Masvidal fan too, but we got to cap ourselves at a certain point. Masvidal was a perfect example of a right time, right place type of thing. And obviously there are certain things that he needed to do to cement whatever legacy that he's created for himself over the last 2 years or so. But the Darren Till knockout, great knockout. That's one of the knockouts that I'll, hats off to him. I think that's one of his best performances in terms of going into Liverpool or at least England. I forget exactly where that fight took place, but it was definitely Darren Till's backyard. Goes in there and knocks him out in the second round. Very clean, beautiful knockout. Then the Ben Askren fight. Goes out there, knocks him out in 6 seconds. But let's be honest, if that fight, if that knee was slightly off a little bit and then Ben Askren didn't eat that clean, that probably would have been a 15-minute shellacking from Ben Askren's side in terms of absolutely grapple fucking Jorge Masvidal, which is why Masvidal was like a plus 180 dog going into that fight. Could he have still beaten Ben Askren if he didn't land that knee? Absolutely. We know how bad Ben Askren's takedown, his striking is. But I do think that Ben would have closed the distance and gotten him down time and time again. And then the Nate Diaz fight, right? BMF title. You got all this heat on you because all the eyes are on you. The Rock's putting the belt on you after you beat Nate Diaz. But stylistically, that was a great fight for him. Nate Diaz is a scrappy guy, don't get me wrong. But Jorge Masvidal is a much technical, cleaner striker. And he was able to put it together very well and beat Nate Diaz that night. Then when he goes up against a legitimate opponent, like look at 2 out of his last 5 fights. Stephen Thompson, great game plan in terms of just sticking on the outside, getting his cardio or his karate going. And Stephen Thompson, very difficult fighter to beat. And then Kamaru Usman, again, best fighter at welterweight right now, going to be very hard to beat him. There's a reason Jorge Masvidal hasn't taken the Colby Covington fight, because he'll more than likely lose that fight. I believe Covington and Kamaru Usman are the top of this division, and I don't think either guy is going to lose to anybody outside of each other. So there's a reason that Masvidal didn't take the big money fight in the Colby fight, especially given the amount of hype that's around the rivalry and the beef that they have brewing with one another. But in terms of how these guys match up, Usman and Masvidal, it's going to play out the exact same way as the first fight. I'd be very surprised if you see Usman actually get a finish this time around, even though he finished Gilbert Burns last time around. But Masvidal is a very durable fighter. The guy has not been finished in over 12 years, where he got finished by an inverted triangle choke by Toby Imada in Bellator. But it's been 12 years since we've seen him get finished by anybody. And he's been fighting some solid fighters in that amount of time. So don't expect Kamaru to go out there and finish him. I think the decision prop is probably the best way to go. But in terms of a DraftKings, you're giving me Kamaru Usman scoring over 25 minutes. You're going to get a shit ton of control time. You're going to get a shit ton of strikes. You're going to get a handful of takedowns in there as well. And I fully expect him to replicate close to that 150-ish point mark that he hit last time around when he fought Jorge Masvidal. So I like Usman. Easily my lock of the night play for DFS this time around. 9,400. I think he totally lives up to that. And I'd be shocked if he is not a part of the optimal lineup here in those big tournaments. So I'd absolutely be targeting Kamaru Usman here. Would be shocked as well if he ended up losing this fight. All right, let's move on to the next fight here. We got Brendan Allen versus Carl Roberson. And Carl Roberson is my dog of the night at 7,800. I think he has a lot of solid skills to go out there and beat a guy like Brendan Allen. So let's talk about Brendan Allen real quick, coming off a knockout loss to Sean Strickland last time around. But even the fight against Kyle Daukaus before, they came in as a minus 300 favorite. And that fight was hella close. He had to fight tooth and nail to be able to secure that victory. But Kyle Daukaus was really putting it on him. Now, that's a further attribution to how good Kyle Daukaus actually is. But also, I think the public and Vegas is slightly overrating the skills of Brendan Allen. The guy was a great LFA champion, had a good illustrious career in the LFA before coming over to the UFC after having that win on the Contender Series. But I think his skills are going to be capped at a certain point. Now, he's only 25 years old, so he could be making improvements and developments on a fight-to-fight basis. But I think his game is more so centered around being able to get takedowns and controlling his opponents from the ground and eventually locking up submissions if that's something that he's able to do. If he's not able to get it down, we get the fight like the Sean Strickland fight, right? Now, we didn't get too many takedown attempts from Brendan Allen, and I don't exactly know why, but he's going to have to go for takedowns here against Carl. Otherwise, he's going to get absolutely lit up on the feet. I believe that Carl Roberson's ground game is better than what we saw in the Marvin Vettori fight. He has a couple of submission victories under his record. Giving up submissions to Glover Teixeira, Cesar Mutante Fajeda, and Marvin Vettori is not the worst thing in the world, but I do believe that Brendan Allen does have a slight advantage when his fight does hit the ground. However, I don't think it's going to hit the ground. And even if it does, I don't think he'll spend that much time there. I think Carl absolutely torches him on the feet, lights up his legs, a lot of leg kicks, a lot of hands, and then eventually finishes in the second round here. So I think he's a great dog spot. He's probably one of my favorite dog spots on the card, considering that there's a lot of sketchy fights on this card. But the way that these guys match up, and the perception, the public perception on Carl Roberson is so low at this point in time, given the whole debacle that he had with Marvin Vettori, missing weight, and then the whole COVID thing. And then, if you guys remember, there was like that viral video that went out about Marvin Vettori yelling at him in the fighter hotel the day that one of their fights got canceled. And then obviously goes out there and loses in the first round against Vettori. It doesn't look good from the outside looking in, but you can't just judge a fighter off their last fight. I'm not just judging Brendan Allen off that last knockout that he incurred against Sean Strickland. Throughout his career, he just hasn't looked the greatest on his feet. And I think he's going to be at a sizable disadvantage in the striking realm to Carl Roberson, who should be able to put a solid striking clinic on him over a 15-minute period. But I do think that it'll take him less than 10 minutes to knock out Brendan Allen here. So I think we should get a solid score from Carl Roberson, especially if he's able to notch that knockout, as I believe he will be able to. So I like Carl Roberson here as my dog of the night play. At 7,800, I think he's gonna score some solid points. I'd be surprised if he doesn't score higher than 80 points, at least to 85 points as an underdog. I would like to take this time to remind you guys to take full advantage of that big energy optimizer on my guy Sal Vetri's Patreon. Super affordable, super helpful, gets you an edge in the MLB world, the NBA world, the golf world, and obviously the MMA world. Sal is definitely keeping it up on that Patreon, so make sure you guys go check it out. The optimizer is a huge help to myself as well, and I'm actually going to be looking to change my DraftKings style now. I want to take advantage of that 150 lineup type of thing. I might start off with the mini max, but the optimizer is going to be a huge help for me to ensure that I'm able to do that to the best of my ability. So I'll be taking advantage even more so of the optimizer, especially now that I'm going to be going with mass lineup entries. So shout out to Sal, shout out to his Patreon. Link is in the description below. Make sure you guys check that shit out. All right, let's move on to the next fight. We got the fate of the night here, and it's going to be Dwight Grant. Now, this one was a little bit tough for me to come to a conclusion for, right? There's a lot of spots on this card that I'm like, the favorites are pretty good, and more often than not, the favorites should win on this card. I'd be surprised if less than 10 favorites won on this card, but the one that's shaky to me is Dwight Grant. Now, when he wins by knockout, he scores that, 108 points against Carlo Pedersoli. But he is so low volume that it's very, very tough for me to truly go out there and be like, this is a guy that you want to have heavy on your lineups. Now, he could absolutely go out there and knock out Sekulic in the first or second round and give us the points that we require for him to be on the optimal slate. But I think there's more trustworthy guys in this 9,000 range that you probably would want more of on your lineup. Again, Dwight Grant, low volume, but high ceiling in terms of if he gets that knockout. But like, is that something we want to bank so heavily on? Not so certain. I don't think that's something that I want to be banking on here. So I'd be fading Dwight Grant, not having as much on him on the lineups, and not to mention Stefan Sekulic has been out of the cage for roughly 2.5 years, but he could come back and surprise some people here. There's a reason the line is closing as much as it is. I believe we had Dwight Grant up in that minus 285 area, and now he's down to minus 225. And I wouldn't be surprised if it starts to close even more as the fight starts to approach here. Sekulic could absolutely go out there and outvolume him, and as long as his chin is able to withstand the power of Dwight Grant, he could win this fight via decision, and Dwight Grant might even come out with less than 30 or 40 points in this. Right, like look at his losses. The one against Zach Otto puts up 17.2 points, and that wasn't a decision. That was over 15 minutes. He was only to rack up 17 points. The Daniel Rodriguez fight, he was able to incur about 22.8 points in that fight, but that was an absolute war. I'd be very surprised if Stefan Sekulic is going to be willing to engage with him in that type of war. He hurt, dropped, and rocked Rodriguez numerous times in that first round before he blew his own wad, and Rodriguez was able to finish him in that first round. But like, even if he does win, like if he doesn't get the knockout over Sekulic and he does enough to win over a judge's over 15 minutes, we got a perfect example of that in the Alan Jouban fight 2 fights ago, 45.4 points. That's over a 15-minute period. not what you want to be seeing over for a guy that's in that 90-100 range. So I do like Dwight here to get the knockout, but I'm just not the most sure of it. I'm just not the most confident in it, which is why I'm not going to be having a lot of him at that 90-100 range. So I'll take Grant to win, but he's definitely going to be my fade of the night here as he yeah, I think him hitting that ceiling is a lot more low percentage than the salary is indicating there. All right, and then let's go over to our sleeper of the night. We got my guy Uriah Hall here. He's going to be my sleeper of the night. Another one that was very tough to choose, but the reason I'm calling him a sleeper of the night, even at 8,300, is that look at the line. Like since the DraftKings salaries came out, Uriah Hall went from being a favorite now to an underdog, and I think the line is only going to stretch the more or the closer that the fight gets. Like let me just take a quick look at what his odds are now. Plus 110, plus 113 at a couple spots, but he opened minus 150. Now he's up to plus 110. There is love coming in on Weidman, and I get it, right? If you run the tape on these guys, especially the last fight for Uriah Hall, and not to mention the other fights for Uriah Hall, where he's a very slow starter, he lets his opponents get ahead of him, and if he's not able to get that knockout, more than likely he'll be taking an L. Luckily for him in that Antonio Carlos Jr. fight, he was able to inflict enough damage on the feet that even though he was getting controlled for the majority of that fight, he was able to come out with his hand raised as he was the one dishing out the damage compared to just the control from Carlos Jr. But Chris Weidman looked decent in his last fight, right? Let's give him some credit. The guy was coming off a very tumultuous run at that point in time. I believe before the Akhmedov fight, he was 1-4 in his last 5 fights, but now he gets that Akhmedov win. And I gotta say, like, good win for him. Don't get me wrong; it's very tough to beat a guy like Akhmedov, but I just wasn't the most overly impressed there. Right, gets his game going in the first round, grappling, wins that round. Second round looks like he's slowing down, loses that round in my opinion, but then in the third round puts it together again. Maybe took the second round off just to get his gas back, and then in the third round he was able to squeeze out that decision victory. So good win for him there, but I think the liability of his chin and his durability is going to be the big issue here. And Uriah Hall still has a ton of power in his hands. He has the sustainability of his power too, right? It's not just the first round where he's the most live. He can knock you out in the third round. He can knock you out in the fourth round like he did against Anderson Silva, even though he gave up the first 2 rounds in that fight. He can't give up more than 2 rounds here against Weidman. He's going to have to pull the trigger. And I think that lightning fast jab of his is going to be very important for him to maintain the distance here against Chris and then ultimately land that knockout blow, which I think that he will. So the reason I have Uriah Hall as a sleeper of the night, even at 8,300, I expect him to be overlooked here with the amount of public love coming in on Chris Weidman on the betting line. But even with that said, I think Uriah Hall will come through at 8,300 with a nice knockout for us and put up a solid amount of points. So I like Uriah Hall. He's my sleeper of the night. Ton of power, ton of dynamite in his hands, kicks and elbows and all that stuff. And I do think that Weidman chin, people are slowly forgetting, and it's weird to think because it's all everybody could talk about is when Weidman's chin was just absolutely shredded. I think it's going to show itself once again this weekend with Uriah Hall landing that knockout blow. So I like Uriah Hall by knockout here, and he's going to be my sleeper of the night play. All right. That is pretty much it on my sleeper and all my main segments. In terms of a stackable main event or not, we have 3 title fights at the top here. I think the ones that are most stackable are probably going to be Zhang and Rose. Not so much Shevchenko and Andrade, as I believe that's going to be one-way traffic. And then the Usman fight, I believe that's going to be one-way traffic as well. Like even look at what did Masvidal score in their last fight? 30.8 points. Again, not the most, but at 6,800, I guess it's not too bad either. But I wouldn't be banking too heavily on Masvidal if you're looking to stack that. Once again, make sure you guys check out the projections, tools, and optimizer on Sal Vetri's Patreon. The link is in the description below. And I'm definitely going to be using it to its fullest capacity this weekend, as I'll probably be going for my first ever full 150 lineup approach in the mini max, and we'll see how that works out. Hopefully I can review that for you guys next week and let you guys know how my experience went. All right, my favorite plays in each salary range here. Now for the 6,000s, we only have 2. We got Masvidal and Andrade. I think Andrade has a better chance of beating Shevchenko than Masvidal has of beating Usman. So Andrade will be my favorite play in the 6,000s. And the 7,000s, I got to go with my dog of the night. It's going to be Carl Roberson, 7,800. I've already broken down the fight for you guys. I think he gets the knockout, and I think he lives up to that 7,800, if not more, salary range. 8,000s. I got Pat Sabatini at 8,800. I think this is a great matchup for him going up against somewhat of a carbon copy of himself. However, he's the much younger, much more explosive, and will be the stronger fighter in this spot. And I think his jiu-jitsu will be a step ahead of Tristan Connolly. I think we'll get a solid amount of control time and then the possibility of a finish by Patrick Sabatini. So I think he's a very solid spot at 8,800. And then lastly, $9,000 range. Obviously, I got to go with my lock of the night play here. Kamaru Usman, 9,400. He's going to live up to it. I'm expecting 140, 150 points from here, and I fully expect him to be on that optimal lineup. So, yeah, obviously, lock of the night got to be my favorite play in the $9,000 range. Once again, shout out to Prize Picks. Use promo code UFC100, and they will match your initial deposit up to 100%, up to $100, I should say. And once again, I will be dropping my Prize Picks tips video tomorrow afternoon, and we'll try to get a link on this video so you guys can check that out. But again, shout out to Prize Picks for the undying support. We are very grateful for what they're doing for the show and for this channel. And yeah, check them out. I'll drop my video for them in the description or in the comments so you guys can check that out. All right. We'll take a couple questions here on the back end and then get the hell up on out of here. Got a ton of content coming out myself this week for the UFC. So once again, make sure you guys check out my channel as well. And then obviously the Patreon, I got a bunch of stuff that I posted up on there. Not to mention the best bets and props article that I dropped last night for the patrons, going over every single fight on the card, giving you my best bet and best prop from each one, as well as a confidence rating on it, so you guys can get an idea of where I truly am. All right, let's see what the chat is saying here. Let me get this screen off. There we go. You guys can see my nice, beautiful, pretty face, the nice, luscious beard flowing in the lack of wind in here. Maybe I should just get a fan so you guys can see it kind of blowing and shit. We'll see. All right. Let's see what the chat is saying here. Dylan R. Shout out my guy Dylan R. in the chat. Building is tough when you like all three champs going to have to get creative somehow. Yeah, exactly. Not to mention, right? Like you got Valentina Shevchenko at 9,500. You got Usman at 9,400. And then you got Zhang at 9,000. I think they all retain, to be honest. So yeah, if you want to build them into your lineups somehow, it's going to be difficult. I'd say Usman, Shevchenko, and Zhang in that order are probably going to score the highest amount of points. I think Zhang scores the least amount, but I will say this, I think she has the highest upside in terms of getting a finish out of the three champions. Do with that as you may. Evan Crawl in the chat, what's going on, buddy? Kyle Davis stopping by saying, is there a fight you'd stack? The pricing makes it seem like that might have to be done. Like if you're talking about head-to-head and stuff, obviously I don't mind you stacking the Zhang and Rose fight. I think that one's not too bad. Oliveira and Brown weirdly interests me as a stackable fight. I do expect it to go the full 15 minutes, and we could get some solid spots from either guy here. Yeah, those are really the only two. I'm not a big fan of stacking myself, but yeah, like you said, the way that this card is currently salaried or priced out, yeah, you might have to look for some stackable spots. But again, I think out of the championship fights, the only one that I'd stack would probably be Zhang and Namajunas. Evan Crawl is saying Hall might need his wheelchair to get out of there. Maybe Weidman as well. Dylan R, can you pick a low 7,000 favorite out of 7 to 7.4K? Let's see. So you're saying Connolly, Smith, Rose, Vargas, and Sekulic. Fuck. I'd say the one that has the best chance of winning out of those five. I'd have to lean ever so slightly with Stefan Sekulic. I think he has the best chance of winning. Like, again, I have Dwight Grant as my fate of the night. Again, I think he's low volume. I think he needs to rely on the knockout here to get his hand raised. And if he's not, the volume of Sekulic could catch up to him. Sekulic could throw in some takedowns in there as well. Again, he can totally pull off the victory here too. Not to mention he's only at 7,000. Second, like my guy Evan Crawl is saying here, he's saying Rose might not win, but should score. I agree with that as well. So I'd go Sekulic and Rose as my top two favorites out of those five. Do they win? I'm not 100% sure, but if you're putting a gun to my head, I'd say Sekulic and Rose. So I hope that helps out. Not too many comments today, which is fine by me. Obviously, we'll get some comments post stream, and I'll be sure to keep my eye on it so that I can come back and comment and see what you guys are saying. So I'm not going to drag this out too much longer. Evan Crawl is saying thoughts on Crute being optimal. I think it could happen. What is he at? 8,900. I think it could happen. Yeah, he could grind out Smith here. I think he could absolutely, get a bunch of control time. I think he could, total strikes, all that type of stuff, takedowns. Yeah, I think he has a good chance of hitting optimal this weekend. Dylan R, thank you, brother. I appreciate you stopping by. Evan Crawl is saying Crute, Sabatini, or Brown in that range. I like Sabatini the most out of that. Like I said, I like him the most out of that 8,000 range, as I believe he's the most likely to get a finish, as well as control time. I think he scores the highest out of those three guys, but Crute will be a close second. If not, he might even eclipse Sabatini ever so slightly. So I'm going Sabatini as my favorite in that spot. All right. I'm going to sign off here. Once again, you guys can follow me at MMALOTN on Twitter, on Instagram, and at YouTube. And then obviously check out my Patreon in the link below. We are at 326 or 327 members right now, which is absolute insanity. I'm surprised. Not surprised. You know what? I expected it to get to that point. But shout out to everybody that believes in your boy for signing up there. Again, make sure you guys support Sal as well. Like and subscribe on his channel here. And then obviously check out his Patreon where he has that great optimizer that you guys can take full advantage of. I'll take this last question here for Joseph Vargas that I'm going to get up out of here. He's saying, good morning, bro. I like Connolly as a dog. I know it's been a couple of years since his last fight, but he did go up to 170 to fight Pereira and beat him. Pereira is a solid fighter, don't get me wrong, but he fought very stupidly in that fight, absolutely exhausting himself, with those flying techniques, that spinning shit, thinking that he'd be able to get Connolly out of there early, but he was not able to. So I think Connolly's stock is slightly over-exaggerated, which is why the books opened him as the favorite, which is why the public quickly bet Sabatini to the favorite. Connolly's great, don't get me wrong, fellow countryman of mine up here from Canada, but I just don't think that this is a great fight for him. I think Sabatini is almost a carbon copy of him, but just younger, better, faster, stronger, all that stuff. I love Sabatini in this spot, but if you do end up playing Connolly, good luck on that. All right, I'm out of here. Appreciate all the support. Good luck on your lineups this weekend. I'll see you again next week to go over that Yuri Prochazka and Dominic Reyes fight Thursday, noon Eastern. As always, good luck on your lineups this weekend, and I'll see you next week.